The storm hit Boston like a goddamn freight train that morning, March 2022, the sky vomiting sheets of rain, and cracking with thunder so loud it rattled my bones. I stood outside Boston Luxury Motors, soaked to the skin, my beat-up sneakers squelching in the puddles, jeans clinging to my legs like a second skin, and a plain white t-shirt plastered against me hardly the look of a millionaire. Right? But I didn't give a shit about appearances. I was there for my sister, Jessica, who clawed her way back from breast cancer's jaws last year. How her frail body a testament to a fight I never wish on my worst enemy. Her 40th birthday was coming, and I'd sworn on everything holy I'd get her that midnight blue Azure Coupe $285,000 dream machine shed drooled over since we were kids stealing glances at car mags under the covers. This wasn't just a gift, it was a fucking lifeline to pull her out of the darkness. I shoved through the glass doors, the air inside hitting me like a slap crisp, sterile, reeking of money and arrogance. The showroom gleamed under blinding lights, a cathedral of access with Porsches, and forests perched like gods on marble altars. My heart pounded, not from nerves, but from the weight of what this meant. Jessica's smile, her shaky hands tracing that sleek hood, a moment to forget the chemo scars. I'd built the Carter Foundation from nothing, poured my soul into it after losing my brother Tommy to a rare disease that left him trapped in a body that wouldn't move. $50 million raised for kids like him wheelchairs, ventilators, hope, and here I was, dressed like a thrift store reject because fuck it. I'd rather live real than play their game. Then came James Parker, the sales manager, strutting over like he owned the goddamn universe. His blue tie was knotted so tight it might been choking him, and his navy suit screamed in better than you. He stopped dead, eyeing me up and down like I was some stray dog that had pissed on his polished floor. Thunder boomed outside, shaking the glass walls, and the lights flickered, perfect timing for this asshole to open his mouth. "I'm sorry, but I think you're in the wrong place," he sneered, his voice oily and sharp, cutting through the storm's roar. He waved a hand toward the exit like I was trash to be swept out. These vehicles start at 300,000. Lightning split the sky, flashing across his smug face, and I felt my gut twist not from fear, but from a rage I hadn't let loose since the day Tommy died. I squared my shoulders, water dripping from my ponytail onto his pristine marble, and said, "I'm here for the Azure Coupe, midnight blue, simple, direct, no bullshit." But this prick wasn't having it. "Maybe try the junkyard down the street." He spat, his lips curling into a grin that made me want to smash his fucking teeth in. The room tilted as thunder crashed again, and I swear the air thickened with his disdain. My sneakers squeaked as I shifted, the sound grating in the silence, and I caught my reflection in a Bentley's chrome-wheel dyed, drenched. A woman who'd fought harder battles than this dipshit could dream of. But to him, I was nothing. Then the lights surged, a buzzing hum filling the space, and a jagged crack split the air, not thunder this time, but a fucking power line snapping outside. Sparks flew beyond the glass, lighting up the lot like a war zone, and I saw me chance slipping. Jessica's birthday was a month away, and this was the only Azure in stock within 500 miles. I tracked it down after weeks of calls, my foundation's funds ready to wire in a heartbeat. But now this bastard was gatekeeping it with his holier-than-thou smirk. "You don't look like you can afford a tire, let alone a car," he added. Stepping closer, his cologne choking me as the storm raged on. My fists clenched, nails biting into my palms, drawing blood. Fuck. I wanted to scream, to tell him I could buy his whole shitty dealership and burn it down. But I didn't, not yet. I held it in, the fury boiling under my skin. Because I knew something he didn't, this wasn't over. The storm outside was nothing compared to the hell I could unleash. I turned, my sneakers leaving wet streaks on his precious floor, and pushed toward the doors. The wind howled, slamming them shut, and my fastenature's own fuck you to cap this shit show. I shoved again, harder, and stumbled into the rain, the cold biting my skin as I swore under my breath, "You'll see. Asshole, Jessica deserved that car, and I'd be damned if this prick's ego stopped me." Little did he know, The real thunder was coming to Morrowind had my husband's name on it. The air thickened with laughter sharp. Ugly cackles from the sales staff bouncing off the showroom's polished surfaces like bullets. These pricks in their crisp suits and fake tans didn't even try to hide it, their eyes raking over my soaked t-shirt and jeans like I was some trailer trash clown who'd stumbled into their elite little club. "This isn't a yard sale, sweetheart," James barked, stepping closer, his voice loud enough to drown out the storm. "Sweetheart? Fuck him." My blood boiled, hands trembling as I pictured Jessica's frail frame, her chemo-thinned hair, the way she had lit up when I promised her that car. This wasn't just about me, it was about her. And this asshole was shitting all over that dream. Customers turned Turek fucks in designer threads, their Botox-smooth faces twisting with disgust like I was a stain on their perfect world. A woman in a fur coat whispered something to her husband, her diamond earrings glinting as she smirked, and I caught Charity Case in her hiss. My cheeks burned, not from shame, but from a fury so hot it could melted the goddamn Ferraris around me. I'd fought tooth and nail to build the Carter Foundation, clawed my way up from nothing after Tommy's death tore my family apart. And now these clowns were laughing? I wanted to scream. "You've got 50 million bucks in the bank, you dipshits?" But I bit my tongue, knowing it'd only fuel their circus. Then it got worse. Ethan Brooks, the young salesman who'd hovered near me earlier with a nervous smile, tried to step in, poor kid, barely 25, his oversized suit hanging off him like a Halloween costume. Ma'am." He started, but before he could finish, a deafening crash split the air. Had bumped a display table, and a fucking avalanche of crystal car models hit the floor, shattering into a million glittering pieces. The sound was a gunshot in the chaos, and James spun on him like a rabid dog. "Clean that up, you idiot," he roared, his face red as he jabbed a finger at Ethan. The kid flinched, scrambling to his knees, and I saw the shame in his eyes caught in the crossfire. Of Jamis bullshit because Head dared to treat me like a human. Lightning flashed again, painting the room in stark whites and blacks. And the power flickered, plunging us into a split-second darkness that felt like a warning. When the lights buzzed back, James loomed over me, his cologne a choking cloud. "Get the hell out," he muttered, low enough that only I heard. His breath hot on my face. My sneakers squeaked as I shifted, the sound a pathetic whimper against his towering frame. And I caught my reflection again this time in a Porsche's hood wild drenched. A woman on the edge. The storm outside howled louder, wind slamming debris against the glass. And I realized I was trapped in it just by James. But by every judgmental eye in that room. I turned to leave, my heart a fucking war drum. Each step a battle against the urge to deck that son of a bitch. Jessica's face flashed in my Minter shaky grin when I'd said, "You're getting that car, Jess, I swear." I couldn't fail her. Not after everything. But as I reached the doors, the wind surged, slamming them shut with a bone-rattling bang. I pushed a nothing. Rain pounded harder, a wall of water blurring the world beyond. And panic clawed my throat. "Open, you bastard." I snarled, shoving again, my shoulders screaming in protest. The staff laughed louder, a hyena chorus, and James called out, "Need help, sweetheart?" mocking me as I fought the damn thing. Finally, it gave, and I stumbled into the deluge, the cold slicing through me like knives. My sneakers sank into a puddle, mud splashing up my legs, and I stood there. Fists clenched, rain mixing with the tears I wouldn't let fall. "Fuck you all," I whispered, the words lost in the storm's roar. James thought Head won, thought Head crushed me. But he didn't know shit. This wasn't over not by a long shot. I'd come back, and when I did, they'd choke on their laughter. Jessica's car and my pride, our fight, it was all still alive, and I'd make them pay for every goddamn snicker. The storm had fucked off by the next morning, leaving Boston slick and gleaming under a sky too. Damn calm for the war brewing in my chest. I barely slept, my soaked clothes from yesterday still clinging to me in. Memory James Parker's "Get the hell out" echoing like a gunshot, the staff's laughter a blade twisting in my gut. I'd stumbled home through that torrential shit show, mud up to my knees. My sneakers ruined and collapsed into Michael's arms, shaking like a leaf. "It's not about me," I'd sobbed. My voice raw as I pictured Jessica's fragile hope for that Azure Coupe. I have the privilege of walking away knowing the truth. But how many people get treated that way every day without the comfort of knowing they actually could afford what they're being denied? Michael's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening with that quiet fury I'd fallen for 15 years ago. He didn't say much, just held me as the rain hammered our state's windows, but I knew my husband, the tech genius who turned renewable energy into billions, was already plotting something big. I didn't go with him to Boston Luxury Motors that morning. I couldn't face that smug bastard James again, yet not after. Had turned my mission for Jessica into a public flogging. Instead, I sat in our home office, nursing a coffee as black as my mood, staring at a photo of Jess from before the cancer her grown wide, her hands gripping an old Hot Wheels car we'd fought over as kids. Michael had kissed my forehead before leaving, his voice low. "I've got this, and they'll learn." And holy shit, did he deliver. I heard the story later, every detail like a punch to the air, and it started with that goddamn Rolls-Royce Phantom, roaring up to the dealership like a beast unleashed. Picture the custom midnight blue finish glinting under the sun, tires screeching to a halt so loud it rattled the glass walls I fled through yesterday. That car, 1.2 million of pure, unadulterated power rolled up like a middle finger to Jamis' ego. And out stepped Michael, tall and sharp in a suit that cost more than most people's houses. His salt and pepper hair caught the light, his presence sucking the oxygen from that pompous showroom. James, that slimy prick, practically tripped over himself to greet him. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors. James Parker, sales manager. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today," he oozed, probably creaming his pants at the thought of a fat commission. Michael didn't flinch, just stared him down and dropped the bomb actually. "I'm here about a specific vehicle, Azure Coupe Midnight Blue. My wife was here yesterday expressing interest in it." I wish I'd seen Jamis' face. When Michael hit him with the follow-up wish, I caught the exact moment. Fetish Hole's world cracked. "No, Mr. Parker, you assisted her, or rather, you refused to assist her. Emily Carter. She was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt. You suggested she might be more comfortable looking at used cars." Fuck, I could have cheered. James stammered some horseshit. "Mr. Carter, there must be some misunderstanding. We welcome all customers here." But Michael wasn't there to play nice. Had walked in with a plan, not just to buy that car for Jessica, but to shove a mirror in their faces and make them choke on their own bullshit. The kicker? He didn't stop there. As I paced our hardwood floors, imagining the scene, Michael turned the screws tighter. A delivery truck backfired outside, boom like a fucking war cry. And he laid it out, had planned to drop millions, not just the $285,000 for the Azure, but a whole goddamn fleet for his company, 7 cars total, worth a fortune. The dealership's owner, Richard Mason, probably shot himself when he heard that, scrambling out of his office. Ware had been dodging calls about their sinking finances. I'd learned later they were one bad. Quarter from bankruptcy perk timing for Michael to dangle that lifeline and yank it back. He didn't mention the gala or the training yet that came. Latter, but he made it clear they'd fucked with the wrong woman. And now they'd pay. I sat back, my coffee cold, picturing Jamis' sweat-slick face as Michael towered over him, his voice calm but deadly. That prick had laughed me out, turned my love for Jessica into a punching bag, and now my husband was there. A goddamn avenging angel in a tailored suit, ready to burn their world down out with fire, but with the truth. I told Michael I didn't want vengeance, just awareness, and had nodded, eyes glinting. They'll see, they'll fucking see. And as I waited for his call, I knew this was only the beginning. Those bastards had no idea the storm they'd unleashed wasn't the one from yesterday, it was us. He'd started with James, that slimy bastard who'd practically kissed his ass the moment he stepped out of the Phantom. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors. James Parker, sales manager." It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today." Michael mimicked over the phone, and I could hear the smirk in his tone. But then he'd gone for the jugular. "Actually, I'm here about a specific vehicle, the Azure Coupe Midnight Blue. My wife was here yesterday expressing interest in it." James had babbled some crap. "Mr. Collins, there must be some misunderstanding. We welcome all customers here," but Michael shut him down cold. "No, Mr. Parker, you assisted her, or rather, you refused to assist her. Emily Carter. She was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt. You suggested she might be more comfortable looking at used cars." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles whitened, picturing James's smug face crumpling like wet paper. Then Ethan Brooks, poor sweet Ethan, the kid who caught hell for breaking that crystal display yesterday, chimed in, his voice shaking but loud enough for me to hear through the line. "She was treated like dirt." Michael told me later how the showroom went dead silent, every eye on that trembling kid in his oversized suit, calling out the truth James couldn't bury. I wanted to hug him, that brave little shit, for standing up when I couldn't. But the real chaos hit when Richard Mason, the owner, barged in tie-crooked, sweat beading on his forehead like he'd just run from a sinking ship. Michael said he'd been on a call, probably begging creditors to keep the dealership afloat after some dumb's investment tanked. "Perfect fucking timing," I muttered, pacing harder. Michael's voice crackled through the phone as he recounted the next blow. "My wife found it and runs the Carter Foundation for Children with Disabilities. She's raised over $50 million for specialized medical equipment and educational programs. Emily chooses to dress simply because she believes in living modestly despite our means." I froze, coffee spilling over my hand, burning like my rage from yesterday. He was laying me bare my life's work, my heart, and I heard the hitch in his breath as he added, "It's one of the countless reasons I love her." Fuck, I nearly cried right there, thinking of Tommy, of Jessica, of every kid I'd fought for while James laughed me out like I was nothing. But the knockout punch? Michael dangled their doom and let it swing. I was planning to purchase the Azure for my wife's sister, as Maggie intended, but I was also considering a fleet replacement for our corporate vehicles, 7 in total, and my personal collection could use updating as well. 7 cars, millions. Plus he dropped this like a fucking bomb. "I was negotiating a sponsorship deal to showcase your cars at our gala. A $5 million exposure opportunity," I gasped, the phone slipping. He hadn't told me that part. Richard's voice broken, desperate. "Mr. Carter, I assure you this does not reflect the values of our dealership." But Michael cut him off. "Actions speak louder than mission statements, Mr. Mason." A truck backfired outside, boom shaking the line, and I pictured James turning green, his career flashing before his eyes. Then came the twist that nearly broke me. Michael said some rich asshole customer, overhearing the whole thing, stormed out mid-confrontation, yelling, "I'm done with this shithole. You're all over the internet by tonight." The line crackled as Michael laughed a dark, dangerous sound. "They're fucked, Em," he said. James looked like he'd puke and Mason's begging now. I sank into a chair, heart racing, imagining the showroom imploding, Ethan's wide eyes, James's sweat, Richard's panic. They'd mocked me, trashed Jessica's dream, and now Michael was tearing their world apart, piece by goddamn piece. It wasn't over not yet, but holy shit, it felt good to know they were tasting fear. I'd wanted awareness, and they were getting a fucking masterclass. Richard Mason, the owner, was on his knees. His dealership one bad day from bankruptcy, and some pissed-off customer had stormed out, threatening to torch their rep online. But Michael wasn't done twisting the knife. He got back on the phone, his tone shifting from fury to something colder, sharper. "I gave them a way out, Em," he said, and I stopped dead, heart pounding. "But it's gonna cost him." He hit me with it. "The Carter Foundation is hosting a benefit gala next month. We're raising funds for a new adaptive sports complex for children with physical disabilities. James, I think your presence would be educational, not as a guest, but as a volunteer." I nearly dropped the damn phone. Volunteer? That arrogant prick who'd laughed me out, who'd turned my love for Jessica into a punching bag, hauling chairs and wiping tables for my kids. Fuck, it was Genius Michael's way of grinding James's nose in the dirt without firing a shot. "He's gotta see what you've built," Michael added, "what you fight for. Let him sweat it out with the wheelchairs and the smiles." My chest tightened, picturing James's blue tie stained with ketchup, his polished shoes scuffed by reality. Then he turned on Richard. The dealership might consider implementing a training program on unconscious bias, or I'll take my business to your competitor across town, who's already begging for my call." I laughed, a harsh jacket sound, imagining Richard's face pale, sweaty, that crooked tie strangling him as he nodded like a bobblehead. 7 cars, millions, plus a $5 million gala sponsorship, all hanging by a thread, and Michael was ready to cut it. "Anything," Richard had yelped, voice cracking over the line, and I could hear the desperation, the dealership's death rattle echoing in the background. A car alarm blared outside their showroom, some idiot sideswiping a Bentley in the chaos, and it felt like the universe was piling on. But the real kicker, Michael threw Ethan a lifeline. "I'd like you to handle all the paperwork, starting with the Azure for my sister-in-law," he told the kid, and I grinned, remembering Ethan's shaky voice standing up for me. That clumsy little shit who'd smashed those crystal models and taken James's wrath was now the golden boy. James's face when I said that, Michael chuckled darkly, like I kicked him in the nuts. I could see at James's career dangling, Ethan rising, the whole showroom watching their king fall. I sank into a chair, adrenaline surging. They'd fucked with me, humiliated me in front of a crowd. And now Michael had them by the balls, James volunteering, Richard scrambling, Ethan stepping up. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about every kid like Tommy, every dream like Jessica's, every time some asshole judged me by my genes. "They'll learn, Em," Michael said, his voice a promise, and I believed him. Those bastards thought they'd won yesterday, but today? Today, they were staring down a reckoning, and I'd be damned if I didn't savor every fucking second of it. The place buzzed with live kids in wheelchairs weaving through donors, their laughter cutting through the clinking glasses, a stark fuck you to the showroom's sterile silence. I spotted James near the entrance, drowning in an ill-fitting staff uniform, wrestling with a jammed wheelchair ramp like a deer in headlights. Sweat soaked his collar, his precious blue tie askew, and I smirked "serves you right, asshole." He was here because Michael had twisted his arm. Your presence would be educational, not as a guest, but as a volunteer. I'd wanted awareness, not vengeance. But seeing him flounder felt like a goddamn victory lap after he turned Jessica's dream into a punching bag. I strode over, my heels clicking like gunfire on the polished floor, and his eyes snapped up wide, panicked, like I was the Grim Reaper in a dress. "How are you finding the experience, James?" I asked, voice sharp enough to cut glass. He swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing, and croaked, humbling and necessary. Necessary? Fuck, that hit me raw, real, a crack in his armor I hadn't expected. Then he laid it bare. "Mrs. Carter, I know I've apologized formally, but I need to say it directly. I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. There's no excuse." My breath caught, rage and relief slugging it out in my chest. This prick had laughed me out, humiliated me in front of a crowd, and now he was groveling? I leaned in, eyes locked on his, and said, "You're right, there isn't. But the question is what you've learned." He blinked, sweat dripping, and stammered. That worth isn't determined by appearance, position, or possessions, and that everyone deserves respect until they prove otherwise, not the other way around. Holy shit, I felt the room tilt. Those words weren't just an apology. They were a goddamn confession, ripped from a soul I thought was hollow. A kid Thomas, all grins and wheels rolled up, barking, "You're terrible at this, Mr. James." And the ramp jolted free, nearly toppling James into a table of hors d'oeuvres. I laughed, a real one, as he caught himself, red-faced, muttering, "He's teaching me about adaptive basketball. Apparently I suck." Then Michael appeared, his hand on my shoulder, a quiet storm of strength, and I caught his eye pride, fire, a glint of something dangerous. "James was just sharing some of his insights," I said, smirking, and Michael nodded, turning to him. "I hear you've become quite involved with the adaptive sports program," he said, voice low, testing. James straightened, still flushed, and blurted, "Yes, sir. In fact, I've signed up to keep volunteering after my required period." I froze. "Wait, what?" This wasn't just obligation anymore. This fucker was in deep, and I saw it in his eyes, shame morphing into something real. A tray crashed nearby, some clumsy waiter, glass shattering like a gunshot, and the chaos mirrored my head. James flinched, but didn't break gaze, adding, "I've been working with Mr. Mason on revamping our customer approach at the dealership. No more qualifying by appearance." My jaw dropped. This prick who'd spat on my jeans was rewriting his playbook. I felt a rush of vindication, yes, but something bigger. Hope. He'd seen Tommy's legacy, Jessica's fight, and those kids, and it had cracked him open. Michael squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "He's learning, Em," and I nodded, throat tight. James wasn't redeemed not yet, but fuck, he was close, and I'd be damned if I didn't push him the rest of the way. James was hunched over near the photo booth, helping Thomas, that Spitfire kid in a wheelchair. After a damn tripod nearly crashed down on them both, some drunk donor's elbow had sent it flying, glass shattering like a fucking bomb. Kids screamed, parents scrambled, and James dove, shielding Thomas with his body, his uniform ripping at the shoulder. My heart stopped. Holy shit, this wasn't the James who'd mocked me. This was a man clawing out of his own grave. Thomas grinned up at him, oblivious to the chaos, and chirped, "You know what, Mr. James? You're pretty cool for a grown-up." James, panting, sweat dripping into his eyes, rasped, "Coming from you, Thomas? That's the highest compliment I've ever fucking gotten." I choked on a laugh, tears prickling Jesus. The kid had him wrapped around his finger. Michael slid up beside me, his hand on my back a quiet anchor, and I caught his gaze pride, yes, but a flicker of weariness. "He's come a long way," he muttered, nodding at James, who was now brushing glass off Thomas's wheels, his hands shaking. I'd seen it earlier, James confessing, worth isn't determined by appearance. His voice cracking under my stare, volunteering beyond his sentence, even revamping the dealership ship policies with Richard Mason. But then Michael dropped a bomb, which reminds me that corporate fleet I mentioned were still in the market. Perhaps you could handle that transaction. Ethan speaks highly of how you've been mentoring him. My jaw hit the floor. 7 cars, millions, dangled in front of James like a lifeline, after everything. James's face went slack, shock morphing into something raw gratitude, maybe redemption. "I would be honored, Mr. Carter. Truly fucking honored," he stammered, and a wheelchair rolled over his foot. Thomas, giggling, oblivious to the yelp. I smirked. Karma's a bitch. But then the real gut punch hit. Richard Mason staggered over, pale as a ghost, whispering to Michael, "Half my staff just jumped ship to the rival dealership across town, payback for letting James run wild that day." I froze. Holy fuck, the dominoes were still falling. James's old arrogance had torched their empire, and now he was their last shot at survival. I watched them, Michael, calm as a storm's eye. James battered but standing, Thomas rolling off with a wave, and felt the weight of it all crash down. That prick had judged me by my genes, spat on Jessica's dream, and now he was here, broken open by the kids I'd fought for since Tommy's death. I'd wanted awareness, not vengeance. And Michael had delivered. James wasn't just humbled, he was reborn, mentoring Ethan, serving Thomas, facing the wreckage he'd made. Richard's empire was crumbling, a poetic fucking twist, and I couldn't help but feel it justice, sharp and sweet. As the lights dimmed, James caught my eye, a knot passing between us, not forgiveness. Not yet, but a truce forged in blood and glass. "You did this, Em," Michael whispered, and I nodded, throat tight. They underestimated me, and now they paid James with his soul, Richard with his kingdom. Jessica's car was hers, Tommy's legacy lived, and I'd be damned if I didn't walk out of here knowing I'd turned their bullshit into something real. Fuck yeah, it was worth it.